of aid to Pakistan. There are more than 1 million Pakistanis living there. We have very important trade, investment and so forth. So far as Saudi Arabia is concerned, we have a special relationship and we are very close to the Saudi royal family. In fact, we protected the Saudi royal family with the help of maybe thousands of Pakistani soldiers in the 1980s after the Kaaba incident. So Saudi Arabia is a country whose integrity and stability is a matter of vital interest to Pakistan itself. And in some ways we have to relate it to the Saudi royal family because in the way things are, it's very difficult to separate the royal family from Saudi Arabia. I don't think there is any imminent threat of any kind of massive protest in Saudi Arabia for reasons which have been explained already, very valid reasons. Saudi Arabia is a highly organized country. It has looked after its citizens. Now recently the king has announced privileges worth $40 billion or according to some reports $93 billion. And that obviously is welcomed by the people. Saudi Arabia is blessed with an immense oil wealth, so there is no problem on the economic front. Secondly, it's a very well-governed country. As anybody who has lived there can see, there is justice in that country, there is a system in that country. By and large, people are happy. Then there is a tribal linkage with the royal family. Then there is the Wahhabi ulama are an integral part of the regime. You know, there is an alliance between the ulama and the House of Saud for the last 100 years or more. So it's a regime which has very deep roots, and I do not see any imminent threat in Saudi Arabia. No doubt in the eastern province there is a Shia population which is restless, but eastern province is just a small part of the country, although it has the oil wealth. So let us leave Saudi Arabia by saying that I do not see any immediate threat there. But in other Arab countries like Yemen and in Syria and in Bahrain, the trouble is very serious, and potentially in Algeria and in Morocco you can also see serious disturbances.
All right. On that note, we're going to take a short commercial break. When we return, this is exactly, Ambassador Moeed has given me the perfect lead into where I was trying to go, which is the fact that this is not just a handful of countries. There have been pockets of resistance, protests in Yemen, and it is now definitely going to be spreading. And Ambassador Moeed predicts that it's going to go to Algeria and Morocco. That's the Maghreb. North Africa, really. We call it the Middle East, but it's North Africa. So we are going to talk about this after a short break, so please stay with us.
Today is the day World Tuberculosis Day is observed. This day commemorates the date in 1882 when Dr. Robert Koch presented his discovery of the cure for TB to a group of doctors in Berlin. At the time of Koch's discovery, TB was raging through Europe, causing the death of 1 out of every 7 people. Koch's discovery opened the way towards diagnosing and curing TB. According to the World Health Organization, the goal of this day is to build public awareness of tuberculosis. TB is a serious problem and still remains an epidemic in much of the world today.
Welcome back to Witness. But of course, in the break, we had a little bit of chit-chat going here really fast, and one of the things we were talking about is that can we really look at the entire Middle East as some kind of can we have a holistic thing and say this is the Middle East? But as Mr. Mazhar had pointed out earlier in the show, that even within each country in the Middle East, there are different cultures, different backgrounds, different histories. Of course, they have a lot of things in common, but a lot of things that they don't. So let's try and quickly look at that. And Mr. Mazhar, I'll let you set the stage for that. And Ambassador Moeed said he really sees that the protests could now extend to Algeria, to Morocco. And one other thing, of course, you have to point out is that Saudi Arabia and Bahrain, GCC countries, are slightly different because they have oil wealth. The rest of the Middle East is desperately poor.
Exactly, and by the way, the other Arab countries are taking so many measures and procedures to protect themselves. Recently, the Moroccan king has announced a lot of constitutional reforms. Same thing happened in Algeria. They have lifted the emergency status which was imposed in Algeria, which is used to be imposed in Algeria for the last maybe 18 or 19 years.
Yeah, I think when the Islamic Salvation Front, the FIS, had won the elections.
In early 90s. So a lot of measures, a lot of procedures has been taken by the other Arab countries to avoid a similar situation to what happened in Tunisia, Egypt, Yemen, and other countries. But still, nobody can count on these measures.
Yeah, you can't cap a natural protest.
And according to one of the analyses, it is something like a disease which is spreading in the Arab world.
It's like a virus just going
And I am
on.
sure it will reach most of the Arab countries, one after the other.
And Dr. Pirzada, of course, I remember a series of articles that we had done 10 years ago in which you said the never-changing faces of the changing Middle East. The regimes continued, I mean, whether it was Hosni Mubarak or Jordan, you know, where, I mean, it's just hereditary, where you have monarchies, but even in non-monarchical systems, it was a virtual monarchy where father to son was going on.
Syria, for example.
Syria,
So
for
all
example,
what is happening in Middle East is actually very, very interesting to all students of politics or this
and
region.
history, yeah.
You know, one of the implication I'm thinking that when people ask the question that could there be a revolution in Pakistan, one of the reasons I would always cite is that Pakistan has many sub-nationalities that do not necessarily, apart from a shared belief in Muhammad as the Prophet and Islam as religion, the Punjabis and the Sindhis or the Pashtuns and the Balochistan and the Kashmiris do not necessarily see eye to eye on many issues. So them uniting on one common platform to change regime in the form of a mass revolt. I mean, Punjab can have a revolution.
Yeah.
Sindh can probably, in the interior, Sindh can have a revolution. But the Urdu speaking and the Sindhis, the Balochis and the Punjabis and the Pashtuns joining together.
The Pashtuns in Balochistan and the Afghan Pashtuns in
and all of them joining together on a cause other than the basic Islam is kind of very difficult for me to envision. But in the Middle East had this ingredient of Arab culture, the Al Jazeera, the common feeling against Israel and all that shaping up. But now the way we are looking at that this region all gets aflame and mass movements and revolution and a yearning for democracy or broad-based governments, this will have huge implication in changing the consciousness in this region in the next 10 to 15 years.
Absolutely.
And I think many people who actually wanted Middle East to remain where they was in a monarchical, stagnant fashion should actually be very worried because
I think they are. I think you're seeing that desperate worry on the faces of foreign ministers from Europe to the United States. I mean,
and they would try to control it in a way that whatever is the outcome of the change should actually be in their control, which I am not sure is going to happen.
Which you're not sure is going to happen. Mr. Matar.
I don't think that. I think that what's happening in the Middle East will all be in favor of West.
You think
And
so?
and I am sure that the Western support to what's happening in the Middle East is just because the West, as we all believe, is searching and looking for their own interest, nothing else.
Absolutely.
And there was a call by Americans and other countries for democracy in the Middle East 10 years ago. Nothing happened.
Yeah.
And they kept supporting those regimes, those dictatorial regimes for so many years. And now when there is some kind of an uprising, they are supporting this uprising. The West, United States, others are only looking for their interest, nothing else.
Or to save their interests. Or
And to save their interests.
I'm going to actually even be, let's pop over to Karachi and get Ambassador Amin Singh. I'm even uncomfortable with the use of the word democracy because we don't know that the new systems that are likely to come in will be all that democratic in the manner that we see. What we can really say is people are fighting for their rights, their economic rights, their civil rights, their freedom, the right to free speech, for example. But will that automatically lead to elections? Ambassador Amin, do you see the actual political systems of the Middle East changing in the next few years? Months even, sometimes people say.
Yeah, well, this is a good question, but I would start by saying that the Middle East countries, the various Arab countries, have different backgrounds, different systems, and what may be happening in one country is not necessarily going to happen in another country. No doubt there is a democratic wave. And there is, after all, the 21st century and the mass media, and people are much more in contact with each other than they used to be. So we have seen it from Tunisia, Egypt, and of course all these other countries we have mentioned. A democratic wave is taking place. But the reasons, I think, basically are a dislike for oppressive regimes, a dislike for this long incumbency of 30 years. For the ruler is sitting there for 40 years, 25 years, people are sick of having the same one and also threatening to impose his son after him like Hosni Mubarak was planning. People got fed up with the system, and of course we should also take notice of the economic hardship, the rise in food prices. The people are feeling hurt for different reasons, but that does not necessarily mean that even after they get rid of an autocratic government, they will actually be able to establish a genuine democracy. Only time will tell. I rather doubt if this is going to happen in a hurry. Let us take the case of Egypt. Firstly, the elections have to be held. We have to see what emerges from the election. There is a question mark about the Islamic Brotherhood, the Akhwanul Muslimin, whether are they going to come up as a large force or they will be a marginal force. There is a case that Egypt is a rather secular society, but we have to wait and see what is the shape of the election. So whereas one thing is clear, the people are against autocracy, they dislike the status quo, but that does not necessarily mean that we are going to enter an era of genuine democracy.
I want to pick up on where the ambassador has left and also what Mathur said. It's actually very intriguing because every country was different, as the ambassador also agrees.
Yes, we all agree.
The newcons were always dreaming, as Mathur pointed out 10 years ago, virtually, that once we have the Iraq and we actually bring a democracy or a change of regime in Iraq, it will actually be a springboard for bringing change and democracy across Saudi Arabia and rest of the Middle East. The dream was there, but it didn't really happen. But now what we actually saw, it's quite possible. So it is quite possible that a blueprint on the Western intelligence agencies actually existed for bringing a change. And every country has dissident and dissident movements, like many dissident movements exist in Pakistan.
I mean, Dawa existed in Iraq at the worst of times.
We have our various movements. If dissident movements are supported by intelligence agencies from the outside in the form of strategic advice and financial help, then dissident movements can become strong and they're capable of at least bringing a change, a sort of change, or semblance of change. And then you can step in and you can help that process of change. And look what happens.
Briefly.
Tunisia might be normal. Tunisia might be a normal thing. Egypt was a huge thing to save. So transition was done with the help of the military. Bahrain and Saudi Arabia have been preserved, right? Syria can go down to dogs because no one really likes Syria. And Libya was also isolated. So the dissidents which we see, the civil insurgents or civil war in Libya see, could actually be very artificial and synthetic. We don't really know because you don't have the exact facts. But the way Western media presents the situation looks like a mass uprising in Libya.
I know that's why I wanted to have this program today, because I'm not convinced that we are getting the real picture. One thing, Mr. Mathur, as I wind up briefly, you can point out that one of the big fears, of course, is going to be that any form of government that comes in, and we talked about the Islamic Salvation Front, FIS had won the election in Algeria, never allowed to take power. That's going to be a major concern for the Western countries.
And I think it will remain, and I don't believe that there will be a major change in the systems or regimes in the Middle East. There will be a cosmetic changes. In Egypt, all of us know that, okay, the president is disappeared, he's not more the president, he's no more the president, but nothing else happened.
Everything else has changed.
Saved.
And it will remain. It was saved, as Doctor said. And I think same situation will be happening in other countries. Maybe in Libya there will be a little bit different scenario, because there is a military action now is taking place in Libya. So the result or the outcome of this military action
could be more Iraq-oriented
rather
than Egypt-oriented. Well, I'm afraid we're going to have to leave it there because I've run out of time, though I think we could have talked for another hour on this topic easily. I'd like to thank my guests, Abdurrahman Mathur, Dr.Moeed Pirzada, and joining me from Karachi, of course, was Ambassador Shahid Amin. We leave you with these sorts of calls that our analysts have brought to us. One, that the situation in the Middle East is critical, but Saudi Arabia, which is really at the centerpiece of the Muslim world as such, I'm not talking about the Arab world, I'm saying the Muslim world, Saudi Arabia seems to probably be able to hold its own. It's going to be interesting to see how the GCC countries, they're pretty stable right now, they probably will stay that way. Bahrain seems to be the only one that's tipping one way or the other, but the rest of the Arab world is in a state of flux. So what will replace any systems that crumble? We saw the mess that the coalition forces left in Iraq. What's going to happen with Libya? Well, that's going to be the important, crucial question. And one last thought as we leave. Dr.Moeed Pirzada said very little unites this country, and I would like to point out there is one thing which he forgot about: cricket. We'll have to see what happens. Thank you so much for joining us. Katrina Hussain saying Khuda Hafiz from Islamabad.
No room for mistakes. It's survival of the fittest. Every shot.